If we want to get back on topic, the reason I had emailed you guys was when JF, you were debating about Destiny, about the girl that you had been with autism, and I mean, just some of the things he was saying was so bizarre to me. And so I actually was just interested in talking to you about it, just to see if we could understand better, maybe even to clear your name a bit of who this girl was
Absolutely.
and what her
Let's
difficulties
do that.
exactly were. Because one of the things that stood out to me was, I don't know what these documents were or anything, but he kept saying the mind of a 12-year-old. And I don't know what that means, because that could mean academically, socially, cognitively, like in what domain does that
Yeah.
exactly mean?
As soon as someone tells you she had the mind of a 12 years old and she had 19 years old, you know that you're not talking about an experienced psychiatrist and you're not talking about a true professional of mental health. They don't do that kind of broad categorization. The story of the 12 years old mentally came from a false claim by a lawyer of her father who wanted to find her mentally incompetent, to
Mhm.
kidnap her literally. And he had the lawyer just lie, and the lawyer said Dr. Mark Thompson found out that she was 12 years old of mental age, or 11 years old, I don't remember.
So wait, can are you saying liar or lawyer?
Liar. He's a liar, but he lied.
Gotcha. Okay. So both.
Because the person that he attributed the statement to is not a doctor.
Okay.
Mark Thompson was an employee of the family.
Mhm.
He was a general counselor and manager for the family. He had been paid for 10 years by the family. So they had him say Dr. Mark Thompson, but he's not a doctor and he's in a conflict of interest with the family, but he gave his name to soil the name of my ex-fiancée and picture her as a 12 years old mentally, when in fact she was succeeding at university courses. So when a 12 years old succeeds at university courses, there's something wrong. Either your 12-year-old evaluation of her intellectual capacities is wrong, or she's just a savant 12 years old. In fact, none of these hypotheses were true. The fact is, she was a 19-year-old and a very intelligent one.
So all I can say is that in all of the psychological testing that I read, and I do quite a bit of it in my job, in no time has anyone ever described a student at a mental age in whole. It's just not
Yeah.
something that's ever done or I've ever seen done. So if it is, it's not something that I'm aware of. So that was the first thing that stood out to me as just bizarre.
Really?
Mhm.
So yeah, like you wouldn't just say the age of
So
what you
I'll
would.
tell you kind of what it looks like. So when you do
Sure.
tests, like psychological testing, at least where I'm at the school, you look at academic functioning. So you would not give an age level, you would give a grade level. So reading, writing, and math, you would get a grade equivalent essentially.
Okay.
For behaviors, it's not has nothing to do with ages. You're looking at heightened aggression or heightened inattentiveness. So you're looking for certain symptoms and those being heightened. So it has nothing to do with age. So it seems like a very odd statement to be made. And so I mean, it makes his story makes sense if this was not in a clinician, but it's nothing I've ever heard a clinician ever say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that was the lawyer who wrote that statement, right?
Yeah, the lawyer said Dr. Mark Thompson found her to be 12 years old of mental age. And even Mark Thompson was not a doctor. So it was a lawyer lying about a non doctor making that statement, who was actually a paid employee of the father of this lady.
Yeah, and then the actual doctor who did the study said high functioning,
He
Hmm.
said
said high
no age.
functioning, mild autism, no intellectual impairment, and capacity to understand everything around her. Is functional, and in fact she was never found to be uh, by any court. She was never declared to be unable to consent to sex or to love. She was just found to be put in the care of her parents in terms of finances and living situation.
Yeah, so I've never actually even had a student. I work with some pretty disabled students that lose their ability to make decisions after 18. I've never even heard of that happening. Again, I work with students with intellectual disabilities, so IQs lower than 70, who really are incapable of making decisions, but no one goes to the court and does that. It just seemed a bit
Yeah,
odd.
This is a terrible system of court that is called the probate court. And in my case, it was an ex parte probate court hearing. That means the person gets found mentally incompetent in her absence and against her consent. It's a terrible process. And there's currently more than 100,000 requests for probate court hearings just in one of the states of the US. So if I think it was Florida or California, I don't remember. I looked at the statistics. So we're talking about something that is more and more requested, and there are prominent cases that have reached the Supreme Court where these things are being used by frustrated parents to keep their young daughter especially from engaging in consensual sex. They make her look like she's crazy, and the courts, if you pay the lawyers that are friends with the judge, you're going to get your order.
Hmm. Never heard of that, but that sounds horrible. I mean, even people with disability, and this is the other big contention I would say I had, is that these are, again, people. And people have sexual desires.
Mhm.
People have desires to be with other people, and to say that because they have a disability that they cannot engage with another person, I think is wrong. But I think on the other side of it, there needs to be nuances that people with disabilities are taken advantage of at a more high frequency and a higher rate than normal population. So there is a legitimate concern there. But again, as Destiny is not a clinician, he did not know this girl personally. And so to make any kind of a judgment, I think is highly inappropriate. Again, I'm not going to make a judgment because I've never met this girl personally. And I think if you don't know someone at an individual level, you have no right saying what they can and cannot do with their bodies.
Did you see what Thunderfoot did?
So I did. And so I think that I'm going to be charitable. I'm usually a very charitable person. I think he was trying to visualize that JF was dating someone with a disability. And that was the meme. And Down syndrome has an obvious facial feature associated with
I
it.
don't know what you're talking about. Just
But
Go ahead.
obviously it's just what a dig at JF with no substance behind it, and I mean he just looks dumb. It just looks dumb. But I think I would imagine being charitable. That's probably what he's going with. JF, you dated not a disabled person. Great meme.
Yeah, but I mean, I respect your desire to be charitable, but when you attack public personalities, that's why, to me, it's a rule that I wouldn't attack someone on their personal life unless they make the statement to me. So, for example, I will often make jokes about Sargon of Akkad's caring for the black child of his wife, or even the joke has now moved to the dinosaur baby of his wife. But that's because Sargon of Akkad once came to my chat on a stream and he said, "I'm caring for my my wife's black child." So I know that it's in the game, it's in the things that he consents to that I make these jokes. And he also told me that it was a joke and that in fact he's not caring for his wife's black son. What he calls his wife's black son is actually his biological son. And so to me, when you get outside of the boundaries that the person has imposed on you, you are potentially hurting other people. And that's what Thunderfoot does. When he represents my ex-fiance, who was a beautiful and very intelligent person, as a Down syndrome person, and he makes it look like she's like heavily handicapped, he is hurting her potentially and hurting my son when he reveals the name of my son. And so that's why, as a public personality, to me, I won't be as generous as you are.
Oh, of
He
course not.
has he has revealed stuff, and it's not even that I'm. It's not even the emotional thing to me. It's that he hurts people around me, and he doesn't care. So
Oh, yeah,
I
I guess I
certainly.
was ascribing his intent, whereas the effect is I don't as someone I don't care about intents very much. I think intents is it's okay, it's important, but what the effect is really what's important. And if it's harming someone else, it's harming, as you said, possibly this girl or your child. All right, go at him as hard as you want. Fuck him.
And it's funny what you described about intent and action because that's a feature of autism. I don't know if you're familiar with that kind of work. I think there was a PNAS paper on that where the final outcome of the action is much more important to autistic people than the intent that led to it.
I don't I mean that's fascinating. I think the outcome is much more important in the real world. It's just I mean it's what happens to you. I mean Hitler had good intents.
But what they had as an experiment, they did a lab experiment where they tell the story of a muffin, someone eating a muffin. And then they have two scenarios. In one case, the muffin was accidentally poisoned. And in another case, the muffin was intentionally poisoned. And they found that the autistic people were reacting much more, even in the case of accidental, they were attributing much more guilt and much more fear to the actor, even if there was no intent to poison.
That actually makes sense with the students I work with. They would it's like something happens and you try to explain to them like why it happened and it just doesn't matter. It's like the effect is all they can focus on, and this is part of his perseveration is with something with autism, and that's just kind of this hyper focus on something that has happened and they cannot get their minds off of it. So whatever the effect is, sometimes these students will just focus on it, and even if they tend was accidental or anything, it's completely irrelevant in their minds.
And I think it's a good way to live also. I'm just like you. I agree that it's not only a feature of autism, but it's also a good way to protect yourself against those people who arrange situations so that they don't have to intend stuff, but they will still hurt you in some way, or they will still gain to their advantage without even having to display intent. They will just arrange situations in which the outcomes are good for them, and then they'll be like, "Oh no, I didn't want that. I
Oh my
just
god. Yep.
I deserved it."
Yeah, it's interesting as a clinician when you just your job is just to observe people very, very closely. I've done this for 8 years now, and you start noticing what people say is mostly irrelevant. It's you need to look at people's actions, and people can say things. People say 100 different things, and look how they behave, and that will show you what they believe, what they're actually thinking. And most of the time, people are saying things either to make the other person feel better or to make themselves feel better. And I would say most of what people are saying, there's a hint of a lie in almost everything everyone says.
Mhm. What's the okay? So obviously, the people who are attacking JF are trying to say that this person had special needs to the point where you shouldn't be fucking them, right?
Hmm.
Now, where on the spectrum is it okay to fuck, and then where does it hit where you're like, okay, this is I was trying forever to think of how to ask this
No, I think
politely.
that's a completely legitimate
Like
question.
one's like, oh yeah, you could fucking do it. Yeah, oh boy. No, not that one.
Again, I know I'm probably boring to people, but it's a nuanced answer. It you have to know the individual. It's like everyone has their own issues, and I don't even I haven't it's not something I've thought about, but I mean, there's
We'll
some people
start
that
thinking.
yeah,
That's what I
I
do
mean,
here. That's what I do.
I'm having a hard time really saying anything. I mean, if a person can kind of take care of their basic life needs, and if they want to have sex with someone, I mean, it's you have to look at each situation. So I mean, there's obvious the more disabled someone is, I would say the higher chance they have of being taken advantage of by someone else, and that's a real thing that happens. But again, they're adults, they're humans, they want to have sex, let them fuck.
Mhm. How
And
how would you?
there's a huge schism between the fact that most actually non-diagnosed people are stupid and they make stupid life choices. But in our society, it's like when the diagnosis falls on your head, then everyone around you is like, "Oh, we need to control her life. We need to check if she's okay." But in the end, there are lots of undiagnosed people out there who are who are half the IQ of my ex fiance.
Mhm.
So that's quite funny. In fact, there are entire countries that have an average IQ lower than my ex fiance. So it's quite funny when I hear, Jeff, you fucked a retard. Well, first, the retard is the label that you put on her. She may just not care about displaying intelligence in IQ tests, but she is a very intelligent being. You could see it as soon as you talked to her and you understood her. And secondly, there are countries of people, by your definition, who are currently getting raped. They're too stupid to have sex.
No, I mean that's exactly right. I mean, and it just seems insane to me. And I mean, there's so many stupid people doing incredibly stupid and malevolent things in this world. They get to have sex. So why not this girl? Again, if what you're saying is true, she's high functioning, she's intelligent, she's in college, she surely can make that decision for herself.
Yeah, people are just fucking. They're trying everything instead of attacking JF's
Well,
ideas or debating him.
it's
They
obvious. It's completely ideological to me. These people are ideologically against your beliefs, and so they're gonna use any tactic in the book. I mean, that's what it seems like very obviously to me.
Yeah,